Thank you for joining me on the Get What You Want podcast, where getting what you want isn't always what you think it is. My wish for you is that this show will create an awareness within yourself of what you really want and the possibility of getting it. Let's go create. My guest today is David Wood. David is a former consulting actuary to Fortune 100 companies, including Sony Music, Chanel, and Exxon. David left his cushy Park Avenue job 20 years ago to build the world's largest coaching business. He became number one on Google for life coaching, serving an audience of 150,000 coaches and coaching thousands of hours in 12 countries around the globe. Alongside his clients' successes, David is no stranger to overcoming challenges himself, having survived a full collapse of his paraglider and a fractured spine, witnessing the death of his sister at age 7, anxiety and depression, and a national gong show. He is the author of Get Paid for Who You Are, with foreword by Jack Canfield. He was nominated to the Transformational Leadership Council alongside such thought leaders as Don Miguel Ruiz, John Gray, and presidential candidate Marianne Williamson. David believes that the tough conversations we avoid are our doorways to confidence, success, and love. They become the defining moments which shape our careers, our relationships, and our lives. He coaches high-performing entrepreneurs, executives, and teams, and now prison inmates, to create amazing results and deep connection, one tough conversation at a time. Welcome, David. I'm so excited to have you today.
Thank you, Shirley. I enjoyed listening to that bio. I'm like, that guy sounds like he's done some
amazing
stuff. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. And you said, you quoted me about doorways to confidence and success. And I think that's so true. Tough conversations, well, we'll get into it, but there were like some really huge upsides to leaning into tough conversations. And I understand that they can be scary and why people might want to sweep them under the carpet, even subconsciously. We don't even realize it. But I'm here to say, let's pick up the carpet, let's dust them off, and let's lean into them. And good stuff can come.
I'm excited about this. I have to say, I've always been kind of an open book. And so I think I have tough conversations with people sometimes when they're not ready to have them because I think this is going to be really good. I know a lot of my clients really struggle with this part. But something that stuck out for me was the Gong Show. I actually watched that as a kid. Is that so, like the Gong Show?
It was the Australian equivalent. It was called Hey Hey It's Saturday, and they had a segment called Red Faces.
Oh.
And so it was national television, and I walked out wearing a kilt and dressed as one of the proclaimers and sang 500 Miles in a very bad Scottish accent. and one of the most terrifying, it may be top 2 or 3 most terrifying things I've ever done in my life.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
I'm not a great singer, and I was worried I'd get the words wrong, and I was worried that I'd not hit the right key, mm-hmm. and that I was playing guitar at the same time, like worried I'd screw that up. It was incredible. It was so terrifying that as I'm in the green room getting ready, I started feeling such bladder pressure, and I actually lost a few drops.
Wow.
A few drops came out. And so I was now even more scared because I had an image of peeing myself in a kilt.
Oh my gosh.
On national television. It was horrendous. And I had an overnight bag with me, and I put on 2 extra pairs of underpants to do that. So sometimes I talk about daring because I think daring is a wonderful thing in life. And that's probably one of the most daring things I ever did.
I have to say, I felt like I was feeling what you were saying during that, because just recently I was asked by a morning show host. I had done a morning show, and she had asked me if I would participate in this thing that has never happened before. And it was a comedy show. She's a comedian, and she was the comic relief, and I was the relationship expert. And it was such an improv thing that she wouldn't tell me what to prepare for it. And I had not been on a live stage in a situation like that ever, because it's like nobody does this where you go on a comedy stage and not be funny, right? But I'm like, relationships are funny, so I'll just figure it out. So we were in the green room. I had a couple kids in the audience, and our opening act, he was amazing. He's an amazing performer, but I didn't realize that it was a little more inappropriate than I expected. And I was watching him on the stage, knowing that my kids were out there listening. And these are like adult kids, but it just was like not aligning with me, what he was saying. And I remembered the same thing. I also had vertigo a few days before that. And so I was getting ready to go out on the stage, and I was stressing about this and I didn't want to get dizzy and fall off the stage in front of all these people. And it was that same kind of moment where I don't know like what took over and how I got through it. But did you get through it? Did you get gonged? Did you?
Of course I got gonged, but I lasted 60 seconds before getting gonged, which I consider was a huge win. And
for sure,
out of 3 contestants, I did lose. I lost to the 80-year-old lady playing a ukulele. She won.
Well, if you're going to lose to somebody, right? I guess.
But I did beat the 2 stoned guys who were juggling chainsaws. So I consider it quite a win.
That feels like a win. So you're not a stranger to putting yourself in uncomfortable situations.
Oh God, no. In fact, when I went, I've had a lot of history with anxiety and depression, and maybe now it's making more sense why I have a lot of anxiety with all the things I do.
Yeah, right.
But my psychiatrist recently said, it's almost counterphobic, and I've never heard that word, but it makes sense to me. If I'm afraid of something, I didn't want it to have any power over me, so I would lean into it.
Yeah.
Because I find whenever I walk away from a fear, I feel small, and I like myself less. So whether it's asking a woman out that I'm attracted to, or stepping off a mountain in Nepal strapped to a paraglider, or having a tough conversation and that feels really awkward or embarrassing, or I'm scared of what's going to happen, I tend to lean into that. And I think it's created for a very rich life of experiences. And I'm not saying everybody should just go and face all their fears.
Right.
I'm just maybe suggesting, if your life was 30% more daring, what would that provide for you? If you're willing to be uncomfortable, if you're willing to be afraid, what might that provide in your business and your relationships? It's an interesting question.
And it's it's very relevant, because I realize that with each thing that I do that's stepping out of my comfort zone and conquering, I become more powerful, and like you said, more confident in myself. We went to Costa Rica, and first of all, I flew in a little tiny plane, which was scary for me. And then I learned how to surf, and I'm not even that great of a swimmer, but I'm like out there just rolling with it, thinking I'm going to pop up somewhere eventually. And I did that for 5 days. And then we went ziplining, and I do not like heights. And it's not even me. It's like something inside my body that just reacts to heights. But I agreed. I'm like, I've already conquered this fear and this fear, so I'm going to conquer this one. And I did it, and I hated it, and I don't ever want to do it again. But there was some kind of power that came from just stepping off that platform, right?
Yeah. So that's the first benefit of having tough conversations, is the confidence.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I speak up with someone, I'll give you an example. This is another embarrassing one, but this is often where the tough conversations are. They're over taboos. They're over things that feel vulnerable to us. I was on the phone, I think it was last week, and I walked out, and I live in the mountains. I live alone, although there's a tenant lives below me, but no immediate neighbors. I look out over this valley, and I walk out I'm on a phone call. It's a glorious day. I'm out on the balcony, and I need to pee. And I'm thinking, I don't want to go back inside into that dark little bathroom. No one's around. My tenant's been away for 5 days. I'm going to pee over the balcony. This glorious valley. I'll pee over the balcony under the grass. I think you're seeing a theme with my stories so far.
Yes, I was just thinking that.
And then this door shuts down below me. A sliding door shuts, and I'm freaking out. I'm mortified. because it's a younger woman. It's my tenant. And I'm now thinking she was sitting out on her veranda having a cup of tea and this stream of urine. So I tell you what, I was upset. I've got a lot of empathy for people who lose sleep over some tough
Oh,
conversations
yeah.
or issues with people that aren't resolved, because it's horrendous. For 4 hours, I was so upset. I couldn't focus on anything else. I couldn't quite see how to handle it, because how do you just go and knock on someone's door and go,
Ask if you peed on them or.
oh yeah, about me peeing off the balcony. Can we chat? I just couldn't. I was so embarrassed, and I was scared as well. I was worried about getting in trouble.
Mhm.
Partly because of the landlord power dynamic, but also in the Me Too movement with a
Oh,
guy
yeah.
doing something and she
Yes.
might feel unsafe.
Mhm.
Anyway, I got coaching from 4 different friends and tried to look at how to use my own methodology in tough conversations. And I did. I applied it to myself, and it took me 4 hours to get up the courage. And I went and knocked on her door and said, "Can I talk to you about something I'm mortified about? I'm just so embarrassed. Can I talk to you about it?" And she's like, "Yeah." Turns out she hadn't even seen it.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
But
right?
yeah.
And I said to her, "There's a chance I'm going to make this worse." And she goes, "Well, I didn't even notice it." I'm like, "Great. I just made it worse." But we had a lot of
Now she
fun.
does have a visual of that, right?
Now she does. But we had a lot of fun. And she said, "Look, people pee in the woods. I like to pee in the woods. It's not a big deal." And I said, "All right, well, I won't do it again." And we had a great conversation, and I feel closer with
Yeah.
her. Now, each time, now this was a big one for me. Like in the scheme of things, this was maybe an 8.5 to 9 out of 10 in terms of tough conversations. And I've had some tough ones. I've risked prison to confess a crime. I've called a bully from 20 years ago, 30
That's
years ago at
awesome.
school, and said, I've resented you for all this time and I'm letting it go. I've done some tough ones, and this one was up there. But each time I get more confidence and I like myself more because I was willing to be a human with another human and take that risk. So that's the first benefit. And then the
Mhm.
second benefit is connection.
For
I
sure.
often feel, even if the person disagrees with me, even if she'd been disgusted, there's more connection available in talking about it in an artful way, if you follow the model, which I'll share with listeners in a bit. And then the third result, the third wonderful thing that we get out of tough conversations is success.
Oh,
We all want
yeah.
influence over people. We all want to be leaders. This is how to do it. This is how to get influence and be a leader. And then whether it's that promotion or that person stopping smoking or the person picking up their cigarette butt or your kids not going and playing with people, you get often, not always, but you'll often get that external result that you want, that success that you're seeking. So those are 3 reasons that we might want to get over the discomfort and the awkwardness and lean into that tough conversation, because you'll be a superhero.
I love it. I agree.
You-
I really agree. So say I'm someone that comes to you because they have a tough conversation and like they're listening to us talk right now, right? And they're like, that sounds great and all, but how? Like, how do I get myself to that place?
Yeah. Well, firstly, I realize sometimes when we talk about this, people are still going, "I don't really have one. I can't really think of
Yeah,
one." And if you don't have
I said
one,
that. Yeah.
yeah, you said that. And if you don't have one in mind, then it's a bit harder to take in the information and remember it. So
Okay.
maybe I could just give some more examples. So some of the top conversations that people might avoid, or they might not even seem like it's possible, are a confession.
Mhm.
You might have broken an agreement and never told somebody. So this is a great tough conversation. What about at work? I screwed up. I did something wrong, never told anyone, want to tell someone. It could be some secret you've kept from your partner, that they don't know everything about you because you're too embarrassed. That could be a wonderful, tough conversation. Someone's behavior is annoying you. Your boss, you don't feel valued by your boss or appreciated, and you want more appreciation. Most people don't know that that's a possible, tough conversation. You can
Oh,
have that. A lot of people don't know they can go and ask for more appreciation. I'd like a pat on the back when I do something well. Would that be possible? What do you think?
Mhm.
So these are some examples. And then right now around COVID-19, people are having others like, how do I tell my kids they can't be with someone else? How do I set boundaries with people? Hey, you live in my house and it's not okay with me, the practices that you have right now, because you're putting me at risk. How do I how do I talk to my staff about productivity when they're working from home and ask them to actually still be productive?
I think
How
that's,
do I, how do I lay off people?
Mhm.
There's so many conversations that are popping up now. So hopefully listeners can get a handle on, all right, I can just kind of see that I might have a few lurking. If anyone's ever disappointed you, boom, there's a potential tough conversation.
Yeah.
If there's anybody you resent or don't like, there's a potential tough conversation to resolve it.
Yeah,
So
it's crazy because, like you said, I think sometimes we don't even know that there's the possibility of bringing that up, right?
mm-hmm. Exactly. Look, I can be a chicken. I've still got a couple. If I think, like, who haven't I really had a tough conversation with? My ex-girlfriend has been out of communication with me for 3 years, and she kind of got the dog in the breakup and then didn't give me access to the dog. And that's still hard for me to this day.
The child, right?
And I don't think she's available for a conversation, but it's been a few years. If I really wanted to be brave and resolve that, I could reach out. Apparently, I'm not ready to
And
do
that
it.
in itself's tough, right? Like that's almost like a tough conversation. Sometimes is even just making the decision to reach out, knowing that it may not be the time and that person may not be ready to even go through with it.
You're right. I might feel upset. She might feel upset. I might not get what I want out of it, which is probably an apology. So I did actually reach out like 5, 6, 10 times over the years, and I've decided to let that one go. So not all of them have to be had. In fact, in the 4 steps that I'm going to share with you and listeners, the first step is clarification. And there's a worksheet for that. We'll give you guys a free download at the end of this episode where you can download the worksheet and you can fill it in, get clear about the issue for yourself. You might decide not to have the conversation with the other person once you've gotten clarity. That's great. Or once you've got clarity, you might be like, I know how to have this now.
Yeah.
I've got the clarity. So, and then I had a lover, and she just doesn't get back to me. It might be a week before she'll respond to a text. And then the last text I got from her was, oh, I'll look at my calendar and get back to you with a time. Nothing. And I got sick of following up. So that's a tough conversation that we'll have.
Sure.
We'll have at some point. And also when you do the clarification step 1, that might be enough for you. Because you can literally do all the work on your own. It is possible.
Yeah.
There's a caveat though. Most people can't, and a lot of issues. If you have the conversation with a person, you can transform them as well as you.
Oh,
It can be a wonderful healing.
Yes, for sure.
But you can do the work. And if you truly can let it go and get to a good place with the clarification step, you might say, I'm done. I don't need to bring it up. Or I'll tell them, look, I wanted to have a tough conversation, but I'm letting go of it now. I really am good. It can be that easy. So these are the 4 steps. There's one word to remember, and that word is CASE, C-A-S-E, because this is the CASE model of tough conversations. And CASE stands for clarify the issue with yourself. And then if you go forward, you'll do the next 3 steps with the other person. And the next 3 steps are A, stands for ask permission to have the conversation.
That's a big one.
Yep. The S stands for share the issue. And here's where you'll make a request if you have one. And the 4th step, critical, and I forget it so often, inquire into their world, their point of view. How is it for you to even hear this? Are you feeling defensive? Do you have a better idea than what I have? So that is a really wonderful step. This is where you get curious about them, you listen, and it's a chance for you to work it out together.
Yeah, because most often their perspective is completely different and their experience is completely different than what you had.
Yeah. And they might have a lot of charge. So
Mhm.
I just did a demo. Um, every week, Fridays, 2 o'clock Eastern, I do a free call. I do a Zoom call. Anyone can come on and they can join that call, and we'll role play their tough conversation. And I did a role play recently where the issue was a woman felt upset every time her husband was impatient with the kids,
Mm.
which is happening a lot, right? With people
Oh, for
working from
sure.
home and whatever.
Most
And
definitely.
she wasn't sure how to have the conversation. So we did a role play. And in the role play, I was her and she was the husband. And I said, look, I want to talk to you about how we are around the kids and particularly impatience. And, when I see you seem impatient with the kids, I feel upset.
Mm.
And then I realize he's probably got a lot of charge coming up. He's probably feeling defensive already. So I
Right.
just switched to step 4 straight away. And I said, I just want to check. I've got more I want to say, and I've got a request, got an idea, but how is it for you that I'm even
Yeah.
talking about this and bringing it up? I really want to know. And boy, did he have a lot to say. And by
Yes.
he, I mean her in the role play. It was like,
Yeah.
well, Luke's just a little monster. And when he does it, I just don't know how to handle him. And blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, tell me more. And I
Yes.
just did the inquire step early because I could see there's a lot of charge. So it's a really wonderful thing to do. You don't want a tough monologue. You want a
Right.
tough conversation. Now, did you tell me in the pre-interview that you had a couple of examples from some of your
I do. I have a
clients?
couple clients who are working through some stuff. And so I asked them if I could use I won't use names or anything, but
Yeah.
just kind of use them as an example so that we could maybe work through a conversation
Yeah, we'll
that may
demo
be
it for
super
people.
helpful to them.
Great.
And I love what you talk about, like the charge coming up. I feel like a lot of times we do just immediately go on the defense. And then, there's like this ping pong that goes kind of back and forth between two people because one once comes up, the other one, elevates, and to have the woman that you're talking about not elevate right when her husband is, like immediately going into that. And
Yeah.
so a lot of this, it really aligns with what I teach. And so I'm super excited about this because these are brand new conversations that need to be had. And I'm excited to hear how you would do this. So
Yeah. Well, can I double click on what you just said? It's so
for sure.
powerful. One of the biggest traps is, unfortunately, we're humans. And when we get charged, when we get really emotional, there are changes in the brain. And if you get triggered and upset and angry, some of your prefrontal cortex shuts down,
Mhm.
right? And you don't
Yeah.
have all your faculties online. So the biggest trap that we fall into is we both have charge on something at the same time, and we're both desperately trying to get our point of view across.
To be right. We both got to be right. Right.
Yeah, but it cannot happen. It's like there's a pipe between us,
Mhm.
between our foreheads, and only one thing can travel through the pipe at one time. Either you're talking and I'm listening, or I'm talking and you're listening. We have to
Right.
take turns, basically.
Right.
And if we don't do that, it's still useful. It can be entertainment. We can have a nice fight. It can be, if you're going to have a fight, have a good one.
Exactly.
But I try and catch that when it's happening and switch and say, you know what? I've got more to say, but it seems like you have a lot to say right now. How about we switch? And I'm going to listen to you. And I really want to get what you're saying.
And actually listen, right? I have my husband, I have 10 rules to fighting. We have our own rules. And so, but one of them is that it's allowing the other person to speak and then actually listening, like not just waiting for them to get through it so that you can get your perspective in, but to actually
Right.
like sit and inquire with yourself as they're speaking and listen to who you're being in that and how they're seeing you be. So this is
Yeah. And it's
exciting.
hard when you're feeling so defensive and you're feeling attacked and
Mhm.
they're
It
so
is.
wrong. And like, if you cannot listen, that's okay too. You just want to realize it and
Yeah.
name it. I can't even hear it right now. I'm so upset and angry. Let me calm down and come back when I can really listen. I'll go and do my own work. Yeah. All right. What's your example?
Okay.
We'll do a demo.
Okay. So I have a friend who isn't really close to his dad, and he has sisters, and one of his sisters is very close to the dad. And he's just grown up his whole life. He's 40 something years old, and he's grown up not really having a deep connection with his parents, and realizing that now, because we have all these conversations, right, about connection, and realizing just in the last year or so that, wow, I might want to create a deeper connection with my parents or with my siblings. But so the one sister that he is close to says, Dad came over the other day and is really struggling with Mom. And this friend is like, I never knew that they struggled. And so, he's like, I want to know more. I want to know more. And she said, well, he just didn't tell me that much, but there's this and this going on. And he said to me, I don't know what to do because I really want to know about this. But for one, I've never been that close to my parents. This is not a conversation that we have ever had or will,
Sorry, I missed the topic. What was the conversation we wouldn't have ever had?
He wants to talk to his dad about what he's struggling with in his marriage and in his relationship, because his dad keeps hinting towards it to other siblings, but he hasn't said anything to him. And so he's just like, how do I approach this conversation? And where do I go with it? Because we've never had this kind of conversation. And so it's somebody who I've known my whole life. Obviously it's his dad, but he's always like looked at his parents' relationship as being solid and whole. And he's realizing that might not be it. And so he wants to approach his dad. And before I even give my opinion on it at all, or my coaching, I told him I was going to bring it to the table in this conversation.
Great.
So this is
Okay.
brand new.
All right. So it's an awkward topic. It's a vulnerable topic we'll call him George. And George wants to bring it up with his dad and talk about it. Mm-hmm. So the first step is clarify. And in the worksheet, it's going to ask a very important question. What's a hope that George might have out of this conversation?
Okay. Like that.
And I imagine if George was here, George might say, my hope is that I feel more connected with my dad. Mm-hmm. That's what I want. The next question is, what's your fear? How could this go wrong? Well, my fear is my dad might judge me.
Yes.
My dad might not listen.
And his fear, because I did ask this question, one of his fears is that his dad is that they're just going to sit there in some awkward silence, and his dad's just not going to know how to answer.
Oh,
he's not going to know how to answer. So he's
just my God.
I fear that, because I did ask certain questions like, so what is your fear? My fear is that I'm going to approach it, and then he's not going to say anything, and I'm not going to say anything. There's just going to be this awkwardness. Yeah,
my goodness, I can relate to this. I had very similar experience with my dad. I wanted him to be more emotionally available. I wanted him to, like, as we talk about deeper things, I wish we'd spent more time together. I had all that stuff. And then one day I had this epiphany during a personal growth course that my dad is my dad, exactly how he is. He doesn't really have those skills. Yeah. So I called him and I said, Dad, my God. In fact, I woke him up. I've never been up before my dad in my life. Woke him up at 5:30 a.m. and said, Dad, I've realized I've been wanting you to be different. I love you just the way you are. You don't have to change. And there's a pause for about 8 seconds. And then he goes, oh, well, I'll think about that. So how's the weather down there? And I got upset again. I went straight back into trigger, right? I lost where I was. And then I realized the joke. It's like, this is my dad. This is how he is. So I can totally relate. All right. So now we've got a fear. We've got a hope. Mm-hmm. And now what we want is a request. Is there something George can ask his dad for that would be of service? And my guess is what might be really useful. And this is particularly important in this case because the dad could use a little coaching. The dad could use a little training on what George is looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think a request would be just hear me out. Just hear me out. If you have any advice, I might want it at the end.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just hear me out and be with me and just remember what you love about me, that would be a win for me.
I love that.
That's what I would possibly create. And this is so important because the dad's going to need a little guidance in this, right?
Oh, for sure.
Because he's going to be, I don't know what to do with these issues. Yeah. Dad, you being here is a win, right? So let's try that now. We've done the first step, which is clarify. And then in that worksheet, you decide if you're going to have it. I'm going to decide, yes, George is going to have it. Check the box. I'm willing to risk those bad consequences of awkward silence. I'm willing to risk it. And now the next 3 steps are ask permission, share, and inquire. So let's do it right now. Will you be George's dad?
Sure.
All right. And you say whatever you think George's dad might say. You can channel him. And I'm going to be George. So, hey, Dad, there's something I haven't been bringing up. And it's because I'm afraid it might be awkward. There might be awkward silences. And I don't really want to feel awkward. But I decided I want to bring it up anyway because I want to feel more connected with you. And I want to talk to you about real things that matter to me. So I want to feel more connected with you. I don't want you to have to be this perfect, shiny image of a perfect human. I want to know more about what's really happening with you. So I want to talk about how things are with you and Mum, and I want to get what it's like for you. And I wonder if you'd be willing to share a little bit about it. What do you say?
I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. What are you talking about?
Right. Well,
Mom and I have no issues.
Oh, well, okay. Well, that's one thing that I'd like to know. So, all right, you got no issues. Well, can I ask you, I'm curious. I'm actually curious about we don't ever talk about what it's like for you. Like maybe I'll tell you about something that's happening with my girlfriend, but I don't ever know what's happening with you. So can I ask you some questions about your relationship with Mum, and you can say whatever you want?
Of course.
All right, great. So what was it that first drew you to Mum? So let's pause it right there. I would maybe just see what I'm curious about. Like, what was it that most drew you to Mum, and what do you most appreciate about her right now? And what's one thing that she does that bugs you? And I might just get curious and get into his life and ask, this is called the curiosity game.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful thing that you can play with anyone who's willing to play. And Dad might actually enjoy being asked some questions like, has she ever frustrated you? Like a lot of people wanted to, yeah, let me tell you.
Yes.
So that might be a fun conversation. And then at the end of it, no matter how it went, I would probably thank him for it. And I might inquire into his world. Dad, how is it for you to have me ask you all these questions?
Yes.
And would it be okay if I do it again sometime? I'm inspired now to do this with my dad. He's over 80 and he's had industrial deafness for 30 years. So it's really hard for us to have a phone conversation, but he just got a cochlear implant.
Oh.
So I'm excited. And I think I'm going to play the curiosity game with him and say, let me just ask you a string of questions off the top of my head, see what comes. You up for it? We'll do it for 5 minutes and see how it goes. That's another thing he can do with his dad. Set a timer.
I was just thinking that might be nice to kind of make almost like a little playful game out of it to start, because then once something is said, then you can dive deeper and more serious into something said.
Yeah.
Like that makes sense.
So this is an interesting one with George. I guess the tough conversation is actually probably very brief. It's really just the issue is, Dad, I want to know more about your relationship with Mum. I feel like I want you to let me in more.
Yeah.
and then I could just switch to step 4. And my request is, can I ask you a bunch of questions? And then step 4 would be, how is that for you to hear? And are you willing? And what do
Yeah.
you think about that? And we could talk about that without even getting into the relationship. We just talk about this tough issue for me, George. That would be having the tough conversation. And then if the dad was a yes, boom, then that's a separate conversation. All right, we'll play the curiosity game right now.
Because he feels that his dad won't open up to him, but he's not going to know that, right? And his dad might even be like, I wish so badly I could have a tough conversation with George and kind of let him know what's going on in my life.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
right?
You never know. I mean, he can ask his dad. Often what happens is we get attached to the outcome and we need them to say yes or give us what we want.
Yes.
If we can let go of that and say, well, I'm just going to share myself and my dad will decide what's best for him.
Yes.
Then it's easier to go in and just say, I'm worried I'm even nervous to ask you about this because you might feel like it's prying, or maybe there are problems and you don't want anybody knowing about it. Like, what a wonderful thing to at least talk about that. And your dad might say, yeah, I don't like to talk about that stuff.
I love it.
At least we can relate around that and get shared reality.
Yeah, that's great.
What was if we might still have time to do a second one. Do you want to bring up the other one?
Yeah, I'll bring this up. So this is something that I've worked with quite a bit, and it's a husband and wife, and both of them have had extensive coaching and have had really tough conversations and have learned all of this about expectations versus agreements and everything. And they have an agreement where he is supporting her with her business, and she in that agreement, he gives her so much time and space to do business and financial, whatever it is that she needs, and then she in return does her place at home and with the kids and meals and all that. So they have like this agreement where she is able to work and create, and then he is still taking care of and doesn't feel like it's taking from the family. But she's been feeling lately.
I didn't hear that last bit. He's still taking care.
He still feels taken care of.
He feels taken care of.
Yeah, because at first when she was like diving into her business, that he and the kids were suffering because there wasn't a good balance there. It was like it was all or nothing. And so he
got a deal now.
Yeah. So they had made an agreement that she would be able to continue certain aspects of her business as long as while at home, she wasn't as stressed out and she was still doing what she needed to do to keep their home together. And so they had made this agreement, and she's feeling that she's doing all of her part of the agreement, or a lot of her part of the agreement. And she's not feeling as supported by him, but every time that she brings it up, he's a little on fire about it, charged, whatever you say. And, but they have all this training and she just doesn't know how to quite dive into that. And she just is getting more frustrated with figuring out how to talk to him.
Yeah.
So
okay.
Sally. We'll call her Sally.
Okay. So my guess is her hope is that they could firstly have a loving conversation about her desires.
Mm-hmm.
That'd be a win. And then maybe a second hope, if we imagine Sally filling in the worksheet, might be that he would step up more and perhaps do A, B, and C around the house to help out.
Mm-hmm.
For example, let's say that's what the hopes are. Her fear, I think I'm hearing her fear is that he might get really charged about it and defensive, and she may not even be able to.
Yeah, like she's trying to bring it up to him, and really she just wants, I think she wants more acknowledgement on how well she's kept to her side of the agreement, and wants to ask him to continue to keep to his side of the agreement, where that might be a little more sloppy on that side. But like without, they've had so much coaching, and so it's like she doesn't want to be accusatory or have her own, she doesn't want to tell him that she's having expectations of him keeping the agreement, but just like that conversation about, like hey,
Yeah.
you may
Okay.
not be keeping your side of the agreement. But
Yeah.
every time she brings it up, he just gets very like charged and defensive.
Right. Right. So it's an accountability conversation, and maybe this is a flashback to what we talked about before, a callback where they're not taking turns,
Mm.
possibly. All right. Good. So let's do it. I am Sally,
Mm-hmm.
and you'll be Tim,
Okay.
who's the partner. So, and I'm going to use the formula in the case model under A, which is ask permission. It's a beautiful formula in the download we're going to give you, listeners. And the formula goes like this. There's something I haven't brought up because, and you insert your fear here from the worksheet.
Mm-hmm.
But I've decided I do want to bring it up because, and you insert your hope from the worksheet. Do you have 10 minutes now?
Mm.
That's a simple formula. So let's start. Hey, Tim, you know, I realize there's something I've been scared to bring up with you. And I think it's because I'm worried that you might feel defensive and attacked and a lot of emotion. And I may not get heard. I may not be able to actually like say it all and be heard. And so that's my fear. But I think it's worth bringing up. I've decided I want to talk to you about it because I want to feel closer to you. I want to feel connected. I think I might feel more appreciated out of the conversation, which is a desire I have.
Mm-hmm.
And I want more joy in our relationship. Do you have 10 minutes now for me to bring it up?
I do. I have 10 minutes.
Okay, great. Well, why don't I set a timer to honor that? And at the end of that time, we can either decide to extend or defer it. All right. So I'm going to manage that. I want to honor that time. All right. Setting a timer. So what it is, and I know we've talked about it before, but I want to talk about it better. And my request is that you give me 2 minutes right now of space and silence for me to get it out, because it's a bit hard for me to talk about this.
Mm.
And then I'd like to hear anything you've got to say. Is that okay?
Sure.
Thank you. All right. So the issue is, I feel like it seems to me, I feel like I'm holding up my end of the agreement that we made. And one thing I would like, if I'm honest, is a pat on the back and an acknowledgement of how well I'm doing it, if you believe that. I notice that's one desire I have. And two, I feel like you're not fully showing up in all areas of the agreement, and I have some specific requests. And I want to know, I had a really important thing I wanted to say and it just fell away. So that's one thing, acknowledgement. And two, I wanted to, and the other thing is, Tim, I'm also realizing maybe the agreement doesn't work for you.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe it's something we need to renegotiate. So I really am open to talking about it. So I have more to say. I want to talk about how I want to be acknowledged. And I have 3 specific requests that I wrote down that I want to make. But firstly, let me jump to step 4 right now and inquire and check, how is this for you that I'm even bringing it up? Do you feel open to us talking about it? Do you feel attacked? I really want to know, how is this for you? Boom.
Well,
Let's switch it over to you.
I feel open to talk about it, and I can acknowledge that you're doing your part pretty well, but if you don't think that I am doing my part, I do this, all of these things. How do you not see that as me doing my part?
Right. Okay, great. So it sounds like we both, what might be really useful is, I'd like to share the things I'm doing and have them be acknowledged, and maybe have you tell me what I'm doing. Like that would be great. If you just point out the things and we do a bit of an appreciation round on me, and then I tell you what I think you might have missed, and then maybe you'll appreciate me for that. And then let's switch. And I'll do an appreciation round for you. Boom, 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 boom. I love these things that you do. What did I miss? And then you tell me, and then boom. So we do like saturate each other with appreciation. And then we might look at requests.
I
In
like that
fact,
idea.
in fact, the logical part of me is now thinking, what if we both each make a list? I'll go and write down all the things that you do that are awesome, and then anything that I would make a request on, and you do the same for me. The things that you've noticed that I do, and anything else that you'd like from me, and let's come together and talk about it and come up with a even better situation than we have now,
I like
and
that.
love each other up.
Yeah, I like that.
All right, great. Let's stop that there. I love where that ended up.
Me too. That was really nice. I think that'll be a good way for them to just connect on a different level
Yeah.
and
So
maybe
what
make a
happened?
new agreement.
Yeah. So I want to say what happened with the model. We did the clarification. We asked permission and got permission. We shared the issue and we inquired into the other person's world. And what we discovered is they had a lot of charge and they had desires as well.
Mm-hmm.
So great. We got into collaboration in that final step. Let's work together to get what we both need. And we both want to feel appreciated. And we both might want more support from the other person. Let's talk it out. That's a great thing to relate over.
Love it. So I feel like everybody, after listening to this today, is going to want to go have a difficult conversation, right? It's just going to happen. Like all of my listeners, it seems like every time I get all these inquiries back saying, oh, that just really inspired me to go do this. So I know that there are people out there that are inspired to go do this. So
Right.
I want to ask you 2 questions, and then I would love for you to tell everybody where they can get the download, and then where they can get in contact with you for further coaching or whatever, and just tell me a little bit about what you do. So my first question is, do you have any regrets in your life? Just something that you regret or wish you would have done differently?
Yeah. I really regret the one time in my life that I cheated on my partner. When I was 18, I got drunk at a party and had sex with someone, and then the next day was horrified. It was the worst feeling ever. And I confessed, repaired the relationship. We ended up getting married, and we're divorced now, but I just went and stayed with her and her new husband and her 6-year-old child.
That's awesome.
And I really regret breaking that agreement, and it taught me the value of keeping agreements and renegotiating them when they don't work instead of just breaking them. Like, it's so much better to tell someone ahead of time, this doesn't work for me, I'm not going to do it anymore, versus breaking it and creating a betrayal. Yeah, that'd be one of my biggest regrets.
I love that you just said that out of all my guests, because something that I've noticed with all of them has been that everybody says no because it's made me who I am today, right? And I still, looking at you and knowing who you are in the world, that did help you to be who you are today. But I love that you just said it on air, like out loud, because that's just another tough conversation. And this is what we've been talking about this whole time. And you just stepped up and just said something about yourself that is probably tough to share in the world, right? So I really loved, oh my gosh, that was just the perfect thing that you just shared. That just shows who you are. So I love that. The second question I want to ask is just, what is one thing that you could, just one word of advice that you could leave our listeners today that would help them to get what they want out of this conversation, out of this tough conversation?
Yeah. I'm inviting every listener to speak your truth 30% more than you do now. 30% more of speaking who you are, what you're feeling, your requests, your desires, sharing your tolerations. Use the case model to do it, which will give you so much more range and so much more influence with the other person. But speak your truth 30% more. And you don't have to go and share the big scary ones first. Go and practice with the little ones. Hey, I kind of want more of this in the bedroom. Would that be okay? Or I wonder if there's something you do that bugs me a bit. I wonder if you could do it less. Would that be, do 30% more of that? Because as you practice on the little ones, you start to build your confidence and your agency and your leadership, and you'll be more prepped when the bigger ones come along.
I love it. That's just perfect. So tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you. It'll also be on my website and, in our show notes. So let us know how we can get that downloadable. I want to get it today and hand it out to everyone, and also how we can get in contact with you.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. The website is playforreal.life. It's not a .com. We're playing a game, but we're playing it for real in this game of life. So playforreal.life. And I have 3 invitations. The first is download the blueprint, keep it handy, and just fill it in. Whenever you're upset with someone, just fill it in, and maybe you have the conversation, maybe you don't. It's a free download. And also that'll put you on my email list. I send out about 2 or 3 nuggets a week with tips and videos and little clips that are going to support you in being a master at speaking your truth, or mistress. And the second invite is I have a podcast called Tough Conversations with David Wood, and you'll listen in on some really some real life demos with people who are struggling with some stuff, and it's quite beautiful. And then the third invite is I coach people who identify as high performers, whether you're a business owner, an executive, a manager, an athlete, or a leader of some kind. And if something resonated for you in this episode, see if you qualify for a discovery session with me. If you qualify, I don't charge for these sessions. I'll help you create a plan for your life and business or career. And that might be all you need. Off you go. But if we both think that coaching could have a big impact, we can talk about setting up coaching. So those are my 3 invites, and you can do all 3 of those things at playforreal.life.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. And listeners, I know that David is very well known in this area, and I really feel like getting in contact with him and having that discovery session will be super helpful. So thanks for offering that to us. Thanks so much for being here. You're amazing. And I can't wait to go work with my clients on this new way of having tough conversations.
Yeah, you're welcome, Shirley. And come and join us on the weekly Zoom call on Friday sometime.
Oh, I will. I made a note.
Role play stuff and just hang out.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
All right.
Thanks so much for listening to the Get What You Want podcast. If you loved it, please subscribe, share it with others, and leave me a review on Apple Podcast. You can also visit me on my website at www.getwhatyouwantguru.com. Would love to hear from you. Now go create.